Hi, today I'm joined by Katy Firth from Stromness Museum, and Katy is going to talk us through some of the work that they did last year and some of the preparation that was going on before that, building up, looking at their online collections and also some virtual tours that they did on Roundme. Katy, if you could introduce yourself and then start showing us around the website where we're going to start.
Hi, Nicola. So I'm Katy Firth, and I am one of the exhibition assistants at Stromness Museum. I've been there for about 4 years now, and it's a fantastic museum to work at. It's a small independent museum. It was originally Orkney Natural History Society Museum. So it's an old society that goes back to 1837. So we've got a really great collection that spans natural history to maritime, wartime collections, ethnographic objects, and a bit of archaeology as well. So we've got really broad collections. And one of the benefits of being an independent museum is that it gives flexibility to explore new things. And one of the main sort of focuses of the last 4 years has been to get our collections digitized and online. So I'm going to show you our website that was newly created as part of our Leader and John Ellerman funded project from 2017 to 2020. So this is where our online catalogue can be found. So I'm just going to show you an example of one of the objects in our collection, which is Buddo. Buddo's a sort of pet name for this Neolithic figurine from Scarborough, which is one of the highlights in our collection. But digitizing the collection has meant having a professional photographer take really, really good photos of the collection. And what that's meant is that we have a resource that we can use for all kinds of future projects. So I'll show you some of those in a wee while. But one of the challenges with digitizing our collection was that we had all of our collection on a database run by Axial. So a lot of museums use Axial databases like CAM and AdLib, but there was difficulties in them putting our collection online. I think they usually work with big museums and big national museums, and really with little museums, they're not geared up to getting those collections online. So it really meant that we had to have a rethink and work with a website developer to make a new database and import that into our website. So it now sits completely separately from our Axial AdLib database. But that's had an advantage because if I click on Buddo here, it means that we can actually put in a lot more kind of different content. So if you scroll down on Buddo, you can look at a Sketchfab model of Buddo that was created by one of our trustees. And that's the sort of thing that is really great for visitors. It's a bit more interactive, and it means that, you know, the limitations of being able to do it on AdLib, we wouldn't have been able to do this. So it's sort of an adaptation, I suppose, and something that's was initially a stumbling blocks turned into an opportunity to do something a bit different.
Does it create any double work with you having sort of the AdLib database that you keep, I guess, still for accessioning, but then creating your digitized database? So do you have to do it all twice, or are they linked in any way?
I think you can sort of export spreadsheets from AdLib that can then be feed into the new database that our web developer uses. But if anybody has any specific questions about this, my colleague Siobhan would be really the best person to speak to. I've got her email address in a slide to show you at the end. But we did have work experience students who were sort of digitizing from our paper catalogue onto spreadsheets and then fed into the website. So they did a lot of really good work, but it also means there's a lot of data cleaning has to go on, and that's something that Siobhan does find, that there's a lot of extra work involved in data cleaning, and that's a kind of ongoing process that will never stop. So I don't think online catalogues are never finished. they're an ongoing project. Yeah. Definitely.
And you've got space. You did a lovely podcast as part of the Highland Object series last year on Buddle, so that could be embedded on your site as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's, I suppose, as I said, one of the benefits. You can add these sort of more interactive elements into your catalogue. But as I was saying, there's really good images were created for our online catalogue, and that's meant that last year, when we had to adapt to being closed and we had to create a lot of new content, that we already had that base of bank of these amazing pictures. So one of the first things we experimented with was virtual tours using roundme.com. So I'm going to show you a few of those and the sort of content that you can have in them. So they're using 360-degree photospheres, and we applied for a grant to get a little camera. I'll show you the camera. It's really small. Everyone thinks it's going to be a really huge thing, but it's probably about smaller than a phone. And it takes...
Ask just what kind of price it was.
They're roughly about £500. So still expensive, but not, out with the reach of even like a smaller funding application. Mm-hmm. And it goes on a selfie stick, but because the selfie stick's right underneath it, it's invisible. So all you can see is their tripod floating. It's kind of floating above its tripod. But I think we've been especially impressed with the quality of the outdoor images. I think indoors, this particular camera probably needs a bit more light to get good images, and museums can't be really, really light because, your objects don't like too much light. So I found that the indoor ones were maybe not as brilliant, but the outdoor ones, I think it has a really, it shows off the natural light of a place. So this is the pier head in Stromness. So if I click on this hotspot, you get a closer up view of Dr. John Ray's statue. But one great thing about it is you can embed YouTube videos. And right at the start of lockdown, one of the first things we did was make these 1 minute long videos about some of our top 10 objects. So you can view that from within Roundme, and what we've noticed is that those videos, the ones that are in Roundme, are getting more YouTube views now. They were maybe not so easy to discover before, but now that they're part of the Roundme tour, they're getting seen by more people.
On your YouTube channel before?
Yeah, and we found that when you share YouTube things on Facebook, people don't tend to click through to it, but if you put them on Facebook directly, that's when you get more people. It must be something to do with the algorithms on Facebook, I think. But some of our museum objects are, the photos of the objects are in these hotspots. So for example, there's one of the Hudson Bay Company point blankets. So we really saw this as an opportunity to take the museum objects and put them into the landscape to places that are associated with the object. And I think that's a really nice way of kind of looking at the museum from inside out, rather than going and looking at all the objects together. You're looking at the town and which objects are linked to places. So it's a nice sort of way of looking at things, I think. And it's also allowed us to use some of our archival material that we don't really get to share or show people. So for instance, this old photograph of Stromness Hotel is in our collection, but maybe a lot of people wouldn't have seen it before. So it's quite a nice way an opportunity to share that kind of content. So
And
I found
find that-
Roundme.
So do you have a lot of users? Can you sort of track analytics of how people are using it and things?
Yeah, so if you go out into your kind of dashboard, you can see the Grahamsy one's the first one I did last year. It's had 3,829 views, and these two are a lot newer. They're more from this year, so they've had a bit fewer, but still, I think quite a lot of people. You know, if you took someone on a guided tour, it would take you a lot of guided tours to get up to that number of people.
Absolutely. And do you just share them on your Facebook streams? Is that how people come across them? Or?
Yeah, so when we launched these two here, we did quite a lot of publicity locally. So they were in the newspaper. I did a interview with the local radio station, and we shared them on our social media. But I think people also come across them through Roundme. So people that maybe just go on Roundme and sort of explore around the world seem to find them, because even before we'd started to push the promotion of them, people were finding them somehow. And I think the same has happened with our Google map. So we did a digitized blue plaque trail through Stromness, so on Google Maps. And it's had 1,722 views. So I think that's probably higher than just people clicking through from our website and our Facebook. So I think people maybe just explore maps on Google and come across it by chance. But I think both, I'm not a hugely technical person, and I found Roundme and the Google Maps easy to, they're quite intuitive to set up. So I think even folk that find digital technology a little bit daunting would still be able to set up a Google Map trail or a Roundme trail. So in the Google Maps, again, we managed to put objects from our collection out into the town. So I'll show you an example. What was the one I was going to show you? Jack Renton. So if you click on his house, you can click on photos. But this is one of the limitations we found with this, was that you couldn't have captions on your photos. You had to physically create a new image with the caption on it and then upload that. So that was something we didn't realize, and it took us a minute to sort of go through all of our images and then add these captions onto them. But at least we know that now. So we're going to do another one of these with more of a natural history focus. So at least we can start doing that right from the start. And the other thing is some iPhones don't seem to display the images perfectly. It seems to work okay on Android, and it might be something to do with Google and a Google Apple competition. I'm not sure, but it's still okay. They can still follow the trail and see the images, but they just don't display quite how we would like. But we did a little bit of exploring. We looked at other platforms. We looked at, for instance, Rambler, which somebody in Stromness already does some guided walks using the Rambler app, and it's really good. But in the end, we settled for Google. We just found it quite intuitive to use, and we know that pretty much everybody who has a smartphone will have Google Maps on their phone.
And do you find that, or are you able to tell if people are mostly using it from home and following the trail, or is it when you do have visitors there that they're using it on their phone to navigate?
We haven't done that sort of analysis, but it's possible, that Google Analytics would be able to tell you if they were in Stromness, but it might not be able to tell you if they're in Stromness, like walking along the street, or if they're just in a house in Stromness. But it would be, so far, I haven't tried to analyze who's been using it, but I think with Google Analytics, you can see wherever people are in the world using it, and something definitely we should do when we've got time.
I think the beauty of using things like Google and Roundme are that people will stumble across you who maybe didn't know they were looking for your experience, and you're there for meeting new audience members that perhaps just through your own marketing streams you wouldn't have known about you, and that's quite a nice added benefit.
Yeah, and one of the great things about the blue plaques is that they kind of guide visitors along the street. So one of our main problems in Stromness Museum is that we're quite far up the street. So for instance, when we used to get cruise line, a lot of cruise line visitors, they would get dropped off at the pier head here, and they would hardly ever make it to the museum. And we find that even with independent travellers, the museum's tucked too far up the street. So this is one of the reasons why we chose the blue plaques, because we thought that would kind of funnel visitors to us. And as you say, they might start following it almost by accident and then find the museum. That's what we hope anyway. And it's great to be able to offer something that shows our collection when we're closed, because we obviously were closed for quite a long time, but even now we're only open limited hours. So it's nice to be, if you see people hanging around outside the museum and you're shut, you can say, oh, but we have, this guided walk you could do, or you could look at our virtual tours, and it's nice to be able to offer that to people.
And do you think that some of the great opportunities are that people are accessing this from anywhere in the world, but also your local community who perhaps hadn't even visited the museum for a while, because there are these new ways for them to engage, they're maybe rediscovering your collection and that connection to their own local heritage?
Yeah, definitely. We have, there's one gentleman that lives in Stromness who's, an expert. He's written books. He was the curator of the museum for a long time, and even he said there was content in these tours he hadn't seen certain images before. So I think people are discovering a bit more about their local area that they didn't know. And I think from watching, this is a sort of anecdotal evidence from watching the Facebook posts, but I think, for instance, the Roundme one, Stromness just looks stunning in the pictures. For instance, the ones down on the piers. I think we just got a really good calm day. So I think locals were sharing it with folk that have moved away, almost to say, look how beautiful Stromness is. So I think it was a nice, way to connect people that have moved away from Orkney back to.
Potentially local hospitality can use it as well, as they're looking to encourage people back as we open up more and more. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's true, and we have shared it with the tourist board, and it's something that they were kind of looking at these trails and things, and I think that's, as I said, one of the benefits of being a smaller independent museum is that you can really just act on things. You can just go, yes, let's try a Google Map trail, even though we've never done it before, and it's like we can trial it and share it with other people in Stromness, and it might be something that gets developed for other projects then too. I just wanted to share the page with our email addresses.
Okay, yeah.
So I just put it on a Google document. So that's my email address. And if anyone's got questions that specifically about digitizing the collection and putting it online, definitely contact Siobhan, who's the collections manager, and she can help answer any sort of technical questions about, how it was actually imported into the new database. Non-tech savvy folk.
And I think just for one last question, we can't underestimate the amount of work that would still have gone into that. And as we do reopen and return to a slightly more normal life, how do you think your museum will be able to balance keeping on those digital experiences and sort of still managing your physical experience? Is there?
I think one of the priorities going forward is to think of, really new ways to promote the museum and engaging with new audiences and reaching out to get sort of independent travellers to come up to Orkney. So I think that although yes, we will want to be doing more real life events and things, I think we need to get the people to come to the museum and to come to Orkney from elsewhere in the world. So I think I don't think it'll be going away. I think we'll be trying to use these new ways of reaching out to a different audience, because as I said, cruise line passengers were one of the audiences that's just disappeared, and we don't know when cruise lines will come back to Orkney. So we're really looking at more independent travellers and potentially younger travellers as well, who might instantly go onto Google Maps and see what tours are there, or they might be familiar with Roundme and find it online. So I think these are things that are going to stay, but they won't be like the main sole focus going forward when we reopen, or we are reopened now. But we have plans for before the autumn time. We want to do at least one more Google Map trail and one more virtual tour. So watch this space.
Yeah, I think it helps you to build a sort of more cultivated and informed visitor. When they do start coming back, they'll be aware of Stromness Museum and a bit more aware of what you offer, and that can kind of deeper that connection. So even if numbers don't get back to what they were for Orkney overall, hopefully more of them will be aware of the museum and more of them will be likely to come to you and spend more time there.
Yeah.
So well done.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to the new tours that will be coming out soon.
Thanks very much. Good to speak to you.